Okay. Oh, yep, it automatically records. All right. So I think we're still missing a few people who are gonna join. So let's give them a few minutes to catch up. Okay. I think this is everyone who RSVP'd, yes. So as to who takes the notes, Telesco Services is here. They take the minutes, so we're good on that. So good evening, everyone. We had a rocky start today. That was fun. So since we don't have the usual IT support, why don't I share my screen and pull up the agenda? Does that work? All right. Not prepared to do this, so this might be a rough go. Wait, let me do something. We may also be joined by my cat.
And I can try to share my screen with the agenda if you want.
Huh?
I can try to share my screen if that would be out. Never mind. You got it.
I just got it. Sorry, I had to pull up the agenda in a format that was useful to us and then scroll because I was not prepared to have to do all this part. So it is 7:19 and I'm calling this meeting to order 20 minutes late. Thank you for all being patient. First off, we need a motion to approve the minutes of the previous meeting, which should have all been emailed to you. Do we have such a motion?
I would like to move a motion to approve the minutes from
I'll
November
second it.
15.
Second that.
Okay, I got Commissioner Zuko made the motion. Who had the second?
I'll second that. Ileana.
Commissioner Zuniga. Okay, any discussion? This is the part where if you notice something wrong with the minutes, you can say, they got this wrong, and we can change it, like they misspelled your name or something, or more substantial things. Claudia, you got your hand raised, but you're on mute.
Sorry, I clicked it. It didn't. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, sorry. Yes, my last name was actually misspelled a couple of times in the minutes. It was spelled properly in a few places and incorrectly in a few places. So it's Connor and it was ER. It is not a big deal, but since you mentioned that, I thought I would flag it. But no other comments
Okay.
about the minutes.
So at all points in the minute where Claudia's last name was spelled with one N instead of two. That's, sorry, which was it?
An E instead of, it should be OR. It was
Oh, sorry, an O
ER.
instead
Yeah.
of an E at
Yeah.
the end. Let's replace it. Okay, any further discussion? Christina?
I move to accept them as amended.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Sharon is abstaining. Did anyone else abstain? Because I can't see you all when you raise your hand on my screen and also share my screen. Commissioner Benante. Did I say that right?
Yes.
Okay. Please feel free to correct me if I get your name wrong. All right, so old business. We have a report from the Bylaws Committee, which put together the draft bylaws, which were emailed to you. Sorry, they were still slightly in draft changes, but track changes at the end. I emailed Jasmine the wrong version. Bless you. So I'll turn that over to Claudia as the chair of the Bylaws Committee to report. But you have to unmute.
I know, I'm trying. So I actually don't have it up in front of me, but
If I can pull it up, I think.
yeah, that would be really helpful, I think. So we're all looking at the same thing.
All right.
But I can just, while you're doing that, Anna. So Anna and Shannon and I met and looked at a couple of different examples of bylaws from two other commissions in the city, and kind of put our heads together around what we felt was necessary, and extracted kind of, good examples from both of those. Put this together, and as you saw, there were a few sections that were highlighted, which we really wanted to flag for discussion. So the sections that are here, the different articles and so on, are really just the critical pieces. And we wanted it to be as simple as possible. We didn't think there needed to be a lot more in there at this point. We can always flesh it out or elaborate different sections more as needed, but yeah, really wanted to, so there was, I think maybe the best thing to do is just kind of walk through it. Anna, if that's
Yeah,
good.
I can scroll as you talk. So you tell me when to scroll and I'll be here.
Okay, so, okay, thanks. So Article 1, I'm not going to read it because everyone, if you haven't already, you can as we go, but basically the purpose, what we wanted to bring to, obviously the name of the commission is Commission on the Status of Women. It's my understanding that it would be a significant number of hoops to jump through to change the name of it, but we did want to see if among this group, not to change the name of the commission, but within the bylaws to expand within the purpose to include girls and other marginalized genders, and then the question mark is there because we just wanted to open that up for discussion. And then the other phrase that's highlighted in the first paragraph, the commission will strive to consider the multiple forms of discrimination that impact women and other marginalized groups. So really with that sentence, really trying to underscore the reality that many women and other people have, intersecting forms of discrimination that impact them in different ways. And we really wanted to be able to, look at that in our work and address it as and when it felt appropriate. So, and then the other highlighted line in Article 1 is also the same thing, the girls and other marginalized genders. So maybe I don't know, Anna, do you think we should go all the way through or just have discussion on each of these things as we go?
I think we should probably have discussion on each of these things as we go.
Okay, perfect. Yeah.
So
sure.
I guess floor is open for discussion. And Sarah Rendon Garcia, you've raised your hand.
So thank you to the committee for all the work you put into drafting this. I really appreciate it. I know and this was brought up when we drafted, like in our last meeting, what are some of the things you want to consider when drafting the bylaws? So my initial gut reaction is I'm not familiar with all of the commissions, right, that are in our city, and if this oversteps the mission of any of them in terms of expanding it to marginalized. Is it marginalized genders or groups? Because I guess I'm getting confused by that first and second sentence.
It's both. Marginalized genders would mean that we would not just focus on solely women, but also people of other
Binary,
marginalized
yeah.
genders. genders, non-binary, gender fluid, trans, et cetera, can't make that whole list agender. And other marginalized groups is in order to, as Claudia said, to recognize that forms of discrimination overlap. And the more overlapping sections you have, the more you have to deal with. And
Yeah.
to give us the ability to try and focus in on where those overlaps happen.
Okay, so my only question is, and this is open, like a question for everyone, sort of up for discussion. In the first part, can we say girls and other marginalized gender identities? And then in the second part, I'm just wondering if we can explicitly name that intersectionality a bit more intentionally.
Okay,
Um,
just a second.
Anna, Anna, just so you know, I'm keeping a list. There are quite a few. I don't know if you can see everyone whose hands are up, but so I've written down in the order that I think you raised your hand. So Sharon.
Oh, thank you, Claudia.
And Chantal. And also just to say that Anna actually had initially suggested using the phrase intersectionality or intersectional, and I actually suggested putting it in because I don't know that everybody in the world that we may be interacting with completely. I just wanted to make it more explicit. So that's why we proposed this language. But anyway, so Sharon.
Hey, everyone. I agree with adding the intersectionality question, but sentence. But if we can back up, here's what I propose for that first sentence. So if you start with help improve the status of women, comma, girls, comma, and transgender and gender nonconforming persons, period. And then perhaps move into the intersectionality in the next sentence. That's my recommendation.
Who is next, Claudia?
Sorry, Yvonne.
Yes, I agree with what Sharon proposes, and also with the insertion of the word intersectionality, because talking about marginalized groups, I mean, there are so many, right? So in our case, what I think we should focus on is where do they intersect with women as opposed to the group itself.
Ileana.
Thank you. No, I wanted to second what Sarah said. I think knowing that we are in the process of getting a commission set up for diversity and equity, I just want to make sure that we're like making this language so that we don't overlap with whatever their pursuit of or objectives are. I agree with the updates and the amendments that Sharon proposed. I just that's the only comment. I second Sarah's concern.
Okay, Chantal, and then Anna after Chantal. Chantal, you're on mute.
Sorry about that. I want to thank you ladies for your hard work. I think the Commission will strive to consider the multiple forms of discrimination that impact women and marginalized groups is implicit. It says a lot. But personally, I would like to see ageism spelled out somewhere. That's all. Otherwise, I'm in agreement.
Okay, I guess I'm next. I object to Sharon's language. I think it is not inclusive enough because it leaves out people who don't identify as transgender or gender nonconforming. Some people are very clear about their gender but don't consider themselves trans, or are agender, which isn't gender nonconforming, which is why I would prefer the marginalized gender language. I am open to spelling out every single intersectional list, but I think we might be better served by vague language that lets us include intersectionality as we choose. But I obviously like intersectional language. And also, everyone, when you're done talking, if you don't have more to say, if you could put down your hand. and then re-raise it if you do.
So, thanks, Anna. Christina, I think, is next, and then Sarah, your hand is still up. Okay. Or up
Trying-
again. Okay. Christina.
Thank you, Claudia. So a couple of thoughts kind of in response to what we've already heard, and I appreciate Sarah's recommendation of changing other marginalized genders to other marginalized gender identities. And I also really appreciate you asking about the other commissions. And then Ileana mentioned that they're in the process of building a diversity and equity commission. And I also know that there's the human rights or human resources, Anna?
It's the human relations, actually, and I can speak to that when everyone's done talking, if that would be helpful to everyone.
Got it, human relations, because I just know from my own personal experience with that commission that they've also sort of done some work, probably not to the level that ideal or that we would want or that digs deep enough, but they have definitely addressed some diversity issues, some equity issues. So I think it is important that we recognize how far we need to expand our scope, but then how we also need to maintain that focus and balance it. I guess that's what my comment is. We need to find a way to balance the scope. And so that's why I appreciate more and more and what you mentioned about ageism. I just don't know if this is the place for it. Because then I think that opens us up for identifying other issues of inequity that we want to address, when the heart of, I think, what we're looking at is eliminating gender-based discrimination. And I can't remember who said it. Sharon, I liked your language. I didn't catch all of it, but I also wasn't sure where it went. So, I think I think how you presented it also was sort of newer, was a refreshed approach to language that we know that was written a while ago. Whether it's deep enough and inclusive enough, I see what Anna was saying. So those are just some thoughts. I guess I just want to make sure that we don't lose, that we go broad enough without being too vague, or vice versa.
Sarah, you've still got your hand up.
Yeah, I just wanted to loop back because I wrote something in the chat, but for the purposes of the notes, I wanted to say it out loud. So I agree with what Christina is saying. For me, it's just like, in the future, if our goal is to really advocate for a lot of issues that affect women, girls, and other marginalized gender identities, it might get murky if we're just saying other marginalized groups, and we more or less have to still say like, oh, this affects the group of individuals that we set out our mission to be. I, in the chat, said we could say that if we want to include the intersectionality aspect, we can say at the end that impact women in their intersecting identities. But I wanted to build out of that and say that if we're going to say women, girls, and other marginalized identities in that first sentence, then we should also say it in the last sentence, because at that point, it's not just women and their intersecting identities, because it could be someone who's non-binary in their intersecting identities.
Thanks, Sarah. I see Jasmine has her hand up. Go ahead, Jasmine. And oh, Anna, and you.
Okay.
I just had my hand up because I want to speak to the other commissions, but that can wait.
Okay, thanks. Jasmine, go ahead.
Yeah, I would just, I'm sorry, I'm reading the chat. I think we should kind of be a little bit more clear, because I think, there's so many times that this information is kind of just at the hands of other people like us, or, in this field and stuff, but we want this to be able to be relatable to the public and to these people, the people that we're saying that we want to advocate for. But if we are not kind of more clear in the language, they're not going to really, and it's not going to be received well, because it's kind of coming off that a person has to pick one to kind of fall in to see if they like qualify for our, our service that we're going to provide, our advocacy or our education that we say. So I think that I'm sorry, I don't want to offend anyone, but like the average person is not going to know what intersectionality is or if I'm marginalized. But I get it should be concise. We don't want a lot of words, but we kind of should maybe want it to be just kind of a true and bold statement of what's our purpose and our mission is. I'm not really getting that from this, and I know this is still kind of a rough draft, if that makes any sense.
It definitely does. Anna, and then I have a suggestion based on what Jasmine just said. I don't know if my hand, does it look like my hand is up or no? I can't.
I can't tell anymore. I've got the chat box and this sharing my screen.
All right, Anna, go ahead.
Right. I was just going to speak to the other commissions, since I actually know most of the ones that have to do with anything to do with discrimination at the city. So there is a Human Relations Commission. They are, usually I would describe them as a miniature CHRO, but that's not the best way to do it here. So they're authorized to take complaints of discrimination and hold hearings and give orders on them. They function like a judicial system, and they also do awareness programs. They can deal with discrimination based on most of the categories in Connecticut, except for, weirdly, they don't cover sexual orientation because of the way the statutes were written. They gave that a different number. But their focus is on education and direct complaints, where they can act as basically as a jury. Our focus is more policy oriented. So we're supposed to make recommendations of ordinances and things like that. So we will not be overlapping with them. As to the Diversity and Equity Commission, of which I have less knowledge and which seems rather stalled from what I'm reading, they will certainly be making policy recommendations. I think their focus is race, but I don't think it does any harm to have multiple people taking into account discrimination, and our focus will be gender, but we shouldn't ignore the fact that gender intersects with other identities and causes greater discrimination. And we can choose to focus on areas where intersectionality is more of an issue. And that would let us take into account ageism, race, focus on the areas that the more vulnerable people can be helped by. But that's your decision. And that's why we've highlighted it for discussion. And now, Claudia.
Yeah, thanks, Anna. I was just going to say that maybe, and I appreciate, Jasmine, what you said, which is why I had suggested in the Bylaws Committee that we not use the word intersectionality, because it is sort of jargon, and to some people may not know what it means. And I really want this to be as inclusive as possible, not just in language, but in access to what it is we're doing. And I don't, as you said, Jasmine, I don't want people to read this and say, well, that doesn't include me or my concerns or my, the barriers that I face. But I wonder if there's a kind of some way to adjust this to where we could something like to consider in that second highlighted sentence that, to strive to consider the multiple, intersecting forms of discrimination, which is like plain English, right? They're intersecting forms of discrimination, and it's the notion or the reality of intersectionality. There's a whole lot of, writing about that. One doesn't need to have read that or understood it to understand multiple intersecting forms of discrimination. So I would propose that. And then it could, that impact women. And then I agree with what Sarah said, that the first phrase, the first part, whatever we say in the first sentence, women, girls, and whatever may come after that should also be mirrored in the second sentence. I don't see if, I don't think, let's see, I just want to check the chat.
Do we want to have a straw poll in this language before we move on?
Yeah, there have been a few suggestions. So I have a,
Yeah.
from listening to everybody, I don't think that what we are proposing is, we need to, there's definitely a consensus to change it, right? So I think,
So we've had a couple of suggestions for women, girls, and other marginalized gender identities, or women, girls, and sorry, Sharon, I forgot your exact language.
My language was women, girls, comma, and transgender and gender non-conforming persons.
Okay. So just as a straw poll, which language do we prefer?
do you want, how do you want?
Yeah, that's
want
probably a
him?
bad way to ask. All right, let's start with Sharon's language. Anyone prefer that? Raise your hand maybe, or speak up.
Wait,
We're
sorry.
starting with which one?
Yeah, I think we need to be.
Sorry.
yeah.
Let me,
And your
Right.
audio is really going in and out,
Yeah.
Hannah.
May I
right.
suggest if we could type out, or if we could type it out and then we have something to respond to.
yeah, Sharon, could you type it in the chat?
I do want to say though, if this doesn't include as much as you need it to, it can be shaped. So I'm going to throw this in there. One sec.
Thank you.
And then is the language Sarah proposed an alternative? So I'm not.
Yes, we would
okay,
use
Thank you.
one or the other. And I have it easier because I've got the bylaws up so I can copy and paste.
So, but we should put both in the chat box and maybe one.
Yes.
So one is like #1 option and one is #2. So we can just be really clear on what we're.
Yeah, I'm the
And-
host. I'm wondering if I can do a actual vote, like a straw poll vote, but I don't poll.
Yeah, I don't see a poll functionality. I'm not sure.
I know-
App.
I know IT can,
Yeah.
but
Thanks.
I'm not IT.
All right. So we have option 1. Let's just put here, I'll put, because if we put them both in the chat box, then Anna, we could stop sharing screen for a minute and just, we could see each other and just, oh, thank
That
you.
would be nice.
Option 2, girls and
Is there a way
Yeah.
to combine these? I think is my question. Or not?
I'm fine with that.
Women,
We need
girls.
transgender people. It shouldn't be just transgender.
I pulled this language, just so you know, off of the New York City Equity Commission.
Mhm. So we could use your specifics, then add other marginalized gender identities. And add people after transgender.
Could we, like, would it be a situation where if we say gender identity as the category, we leave it broader so that in the future things could be included and we can say gender identity, comma, such as transgender person or people and gender non-conforming persons?
Well, I like that. I think it's
Yeah.
smart to leave it broader because we're always learning more.
I have one little issue with gender non-conforming person. I don't know, perhaps it's a language thing. I found it to be, I just don't like it. Non-conforming, I don't like it. I think it may not sit well with some people. Can we find, I find it a bit rough. Is there
Is your
any way-
concern that it is rude to people who are gender non-conforming?
Yes, because what if they say we're non-conforming to what? What is ours is the norm? Who decides you know, I'm trying to put myself in their shoes and say, well, who's deciding that we are non-conforming? What is, you know, what is the norm here?
I think that language is not uncommonly used in queer circles.
Hmm. Oh, really?
And it covers people who are very clear about their gender, but for instance, men who like to wear skirts. Their gender is clear. They do not conform to the expectations of their gender.
Hmm. Okay, if you know it's accepted and
If someone disagrees with me, please speak up. I'm not the speaker for queer people.
No, I actually went on a training recently for work, and that was covered. So it is a common term that people, you know, in those circles actually self-identify as. So I think it would be
non-conforming.
appropriate.
Okay, well, thank you.
No problem.
So, so Chantal, does that make you feel a bit more comfortable by
Yes.
including that? Okay.
Absolutely.
Okay. So just Sarah, going back to your suggestion of, oh, look, there it is in option 3.
Anna typed it out.
Okay, so girls, so it would be women, girls, or the proposal option, the third option is women, girls, and other marginalized genders or gender identities.
Oh, yeah, sorry.
As transgender people and gender non-conforming people.
Let me
So
rewrite that.
a hybrid of 1 and 2, but putting the broader category at the beginning, the other marginalized genders at the beginning, and including the other 2 as examples. Okay, so that would be, sorry, so before we do a straw poll, are there other questions, comments, reflections on any of these options? And I do also going back, Osmond, to your comment before about sort of people not seeing themselves reflected or feeling excluded. How does this sit with you with regard to those concerns that you expressed?
I was hoping we could get that next once we've gotten this language done. But Jasmine, if you feel like this language also affects that, please tell me. Because I also wanted to address your concerns about the intersectionality language. Oh, yes, sorry. Thank you.
Processing it. I'm not really sure. It's kind of hard when we're chopping it up. So I think like what Anna was saying, if we kind of get, can vote on this and get to the second sentence, and then we can kind of see it all together and see how it flows. And if it's sounding, authentic.
Sounds good. I do have a process question, Anna, or others. So, I mean, is our thought that we would, seeing that we're only on the first sentence, and have other agenda items, like just procedurally, like what is the goal that we'll, I know we don't have, maybe we just address the highlighted things in the document, and then we, by subcommittee, do we rework it based on the discussion? And then is that the idea, or?
My suggestion would be we discuss all of it. If someone has some discussion on things other than the highlighted things, we discuss it, but we can actually take this reworked language and vote on the bylaws as amended by discussion. So we can have bylaws done tonight if we want to.
Okay. Awesome.
And that's why I'm kind of chopping it up by sentence so we don't go nuts, and we'll have them all together to vote on as amended.
Okay, so should we, thank you very much. That's super helpful. Should we do a straw poll, and is it just a show of hands for each option? Is that the best way to do this? Okay.
Straw poll, we now have options 1, 2, and 3. Has everyone had a chance to review them? Okay. Hands up for option 1. Hands up for option 2. Hands up for option 3. Gosh, isn't it nice? We're all in agreement.
Actually, did everybody raise their hand? I didn't see. Yeah,
Lesko went on off video because they didn't want to be seen for the vote.
okay, I just didn't see everybody's hands up, but did everybody vote one way or the other? Okay. Chantal, you're muted, Chantal, were you saying something?
I said there's a majority of yes. I think I failed to raise my hand, but I'll go with the majority.
And Jasmine, did you raise your hand? I didn't see your hand up.
I did, and it went quick, but I
Sorry.
agree with the majority too.
Are you, okay, and Christine, I see your
I was just
virtual
gonna
hand
say-
up.
Well, yeah, my virtual hand, but I was just gonna say, are we looking for a majority or, I guess I just want to be mindful that we don't put folks on the spot.
Yeah,
Or do the option of in favor, opposed, abstain. I'm not, we don't want to
Yeah.
overcomplicate things.
yeah,
Because then we have to, I know eventually there's a full vote, but I guess I'm just saying for the good of the order, if if we just do a majority, I'm sorry, I have a frog in my throat. If we just do a majority vote, then we don't have to,
okay, that makes sense. That makes sense.
Although I do want people to feel free to speak up if there's issues.
I agree.
Okay, so that would be our first change. Let's look at that second sentence that Jasmine, and I think Claudia, you had some suggested language for that. Could you type it in?
Sure. Let me see if I can.
Should I go back to screen sharing?
Maybe, yeah.
Okay.
What if we just, can we speak?
Yeah, please.
Go ahead.
I was just reading, what if we just, where the sentence says to review progress and assist in elimination of gender-based discrimination in the city of Norwalk? Can we just say just gender-based discrimination?
Yeah. If you want to remove to help improve the status of women, girls, and other marginalized gender identities from that,
Because
we've
if
said it above.
we would just put, versus status of women, we would just put the same sentence that we just had in the first paragraph, right?
Yeah, I think what we were looking at right now is the sentence about intersectionality. So right now we've got it written, the commission will strive to consider multiple forms of discrimination that impact women and other marginalized groups. And there was some discussion of changing that language. I think we've gone through several iterations, so I apologize if I leave someone out, but the current one suggested by Claudia is instead multiple forms of discrimination, consider the multiple intersecting forms of discrimination that impact women and blah, blah, blah.
Okay, sorry, skip one.
No.
Or could you just
that
say
address your
including after other marginalized groups, comma, including blah, 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 right? What we want.
Are you in the chat?
No, I think Chantal I think she's suggesting what we were saying a few minutes ago, that whatever we have at the end of the first sentence should also be mirrored at the end of the second sentence, right?
Oh, yes, I agree.
Oh, I thought she would,
Or
Chantal,
no.
maybe you can clarify because I understood that Chantal wanted to give examples of the marginalized groups, like ageism or something else, which for me
Well,
is a slippery slope because then there's a lot of
No,
groups.
I was saying, for example, when I read it first, I thought, okay, women, it says the commission will strive to consider multiple forms of discrimination that impact women in general, including, we could put parentheses, including girls, if it's not, and other marginalized group, every group that is marginalized, being on the basis of sex, color, you can put a comma and including
Oh, right.
XYZ. and that maintain without a lot of structural changes.
Yeah, the problem I see with that is that if we include one group, then we have to start naming all the groups
All
that are
groups,
marginalized. Yes.
Yeah.
See, for example, e.g., enter.
If we wanted to, we could do the protected groups in Connecticut, but that gets us into, I mean, keeping it vague keeps our options open as we learn more.
Okay.
Mhm. I think that when you do bylaws, you want to keep them very general.
Yep.
And then if you want to be very specific about something, then you create other documents that show the specificity.
I would agree.
Thank you.
Jasmine, oh, sorry. Someone was talking. No? Jasmine, I just wanted, I like really appreciate you bringing up that we want to make this understandable to the general public, especially the groups that we're trying to advocate for or like include in this. So I'm just wondering, like, I totally agree intersectionality is like a academic term, basically that's jargony for the general public. Do you feel that saying something, because for me, it's like impact women, which I know we have to add the other
Yeah.
things that we added, but if we say impact women and other marginalized groups, for me, what's missing there is that the women share the identity of the marginalized group. So, so women and their like other marginalized identities make sense? Like, do you think that's clear enough, or is that still too jargony?
Or Claudia's language of consider the multiple intersecting forms of discrimination that affect women. And
Oh, so there we would just say that impact women, girls, and other.
yeah, that way we get the
Kinds of, yeah.
intersectional, we use discrimination, which I think everyone understands.
Yeah.
Jasmine, what do you think?
I agree with that.
Okay.
I like that better than, sorry,
Yeah.
I'm being quiet because I'm learning a lot. I come from more of the background of like I guess the politics you would call it, and I'm learning a lot of the right names for groups of people. So that's why I didn't really weigh in on that, because it's not a position that I know the right words to use. And while you guys are like so well versed in the intersectionality, I'm Googling it to try to understand exactly what it is and to make sure that we use it like properly. So I really like Claudia's wording of just saying, consider the multiple, sorry, the chat just moved on me, multiple intersection forms of discrimination, because I think that takes it more to a simpler level than a little more academic that you guys, several of you obviously have the background in because you all know what it means. But for somebody just reading it, to understand that they're part of this, I think a little simpler would be great.
So just to push back on that though, like in the one that Yvonne just said, when we say multiple intersecting forms of gender discrimination, and please stop me if this is getting too nitty-gritty, but the reason I like the intersecting identities or the intersecting what Claudia said, intersecting forms of discrimination, is because for example, if you're a white woman, you're still a woman, but you have not as much discrimination in the area of like education as someone who's a Black Latina woman. And so for that white woman, their education is not discriminated against as like technically because they're more in power. So when we say that we want to have identities, we still want to be able to advocate for all women, regardless if they experience discrimination or not, in education, if that's what they want us to fight for. So I feel like by saying forms of gender discrimination, we're limiting ourselves in that sense. I don't know if that made sense.
That made a lot of sense, because that way we can't take into account the other ways other identities make womanhood worse or better.
And, sorry,
I
And the
agree
other
with you,
forms
and
of
that's why I thought discrimination, that's broad. And
Yeah.
when you, that's broad, that is inclusive. A lot of form of discrimination falls under the main category of discrimination.
So I just added, I changed the language somewhat so we would have a record of this, and this is what we're discussing now. I took Claudia's language and added the rest.
I have a, and I really, really appreciate and am glad to hear what you voiced, Shannon, because we always need to keep ourselves in check. I totally do. Sometimes I can actually speak in acronyms and it sounds like I'm speaking in alphabet soup. And one time I did it to my entire family and they're like, Christina, what are you talking about? And I'm like, don't you know what I'm talking about? And they're like, no. I'm like, okay, let me rephrase this. And I know that intersectionality and intersecting forms, I know that that has a very specific meaning, but to the point where this is going to be a public document and we want that larger scope of understanding, what about if we simplified without no intention of offending? And I preface that, instead of saying intersecting, say overlapping, because it is an overlapping of different identities. If you are a white Latina woman, you share those multiple identities. It's just a thought. If that word, because I feel like we keep going back to that language. So if that's the word, again, I'm totally fine with being overruled, but just wanted to offer it since we are wordsmithing to some degree. I just want to give that some thought. That's all.
Can I say something?
please.
Yes. I'm so torn here. I understand what you're saying. Like, we want to make the public to be able to understand it, but there's also a really sort of big part of me that says, well, we want to be kind of loud about this. And what is our point? Intersecting is such an important word in our communities that maybe I don't want to also cancel things that exist.
Yeah, definitely not the intent to cancel it. It's more to just,
Yeah.
You know, I'm just hearing what some of the other feedback is and the various voices that we're hearing.
Yeah. I recommend we keep intersecting because it's the word in the field, and maybe we can, part of our attempt, we can, educate the public.
Mm-hmm. I agree with that wholeheartedly about helping the public be educated about it. That sounds like that's going to be one of our first, I would say probably one of our first, I think, activities and engagements. I would.
Okay. Any further discussion? All right, so it sounds like the only question here left is, do we want to use intersecting or overlapping?
What about doing intersecting / overlapping? Two words meaning almost the same thing, then it satisfies everybody. Would that be grammatically incorrect?
I personally believe that intersecting is enough.
Okay,
Yeah,
then let's do intersecting / overlapping.
That's why I think it's about coming to some clarity and not trying, and I'll speak for myself, not trying to make cover all base. We'll never make everybody happy, right? I don't mean that to make that little by any means. So yeah, I would say if I tossed it as an idea, if we want to keep intersecting, then I say we keep it. There's no hard feelings. Just.
So is there a problem in slashing, intersecting /
I think waters it down rather than even more so rather than
and helping, then we keep intersecting and we move on.
Yep.
Okay, I'm gonna skip this next highlight because I think we've already discussed this. Although, is it okay if I just simplify this one to other marginalized gender identities instead of doing the examples, since we did the examples above?
Yeah, I mean, I think so. I think that wasn't there a comment earlier about this sentence, like taking out the whole second half of the sentence. I can't remember who suggested that, ending after.
Yeah, that was
gender-
Jasmine's suggestion, and that was a good one.
To just end after discrimination. Was that what you had said, Jasmine? Or in the city?
Yeah. I think that's a good idea.
Yeah, I like
Any
that.
objections? Right, I can't see everyone, but I'm not hearing any. All right, so
and-
Claudia, do you want to move on to
Yes.
discussing all the other stuff?
Okay, so I'm going to speed review. So Article 2 is membership, 11 members. We all went through the process of being nominated, so we know what the so this is, sorry, Section 1 is the officers. Shall consist of chairperson, vice chairperson. That was what we had decided at our first meeting in November. Each of the officers would serve in a 1 year, for 1 year. Nominating procedure, so nominating committee, that would be composed of 3 members of the commission whose responsibility is to present a slate of officers for election at the annual meeting. And later on, we mentioned when that is. Members of the nominating committee are eligible to be nominated for office. Report will be distributed at least 5 days before the annual meeting. Then the election of officers is at the annual meeting. The slate would be presented. Nominations from the floor will be accepted upon a motion and second. For each position on the slate that is challenged, an election will be held by written ballot, starting with chair, then vice chair. The terms of office, this was one thing we also wanted to discuss. We thought that it was, I mean, so the term is 1 year, but we wanted to have a group discussion and decision on if that feels right to people for it to be a 1 year term for.
That's not optional, that's statutory, I think.
And that's not optional. That's that is not up for discussion. But whether, like, how many consecutive years. So we had suggested language, and again, this is just for discussion, are eligible for re-election except the chairperson may not serve more than 2 full consecutive years. So yeah, go ahead, Anna.
Of the 2 bylaws we looked at, one didn't have any term limitations. One had a 2 consecutive year term limitation. So really, we can do whatever we want here.
Yes,
And Christina.
I'd really like to suggest we do keep it no more than 2, only because it allows us to really, it allows us to pass the torch. It allows us to identify new participation in commissions. It also allows us to be responsible to ourselves on the commission to continue to always look for additional folks to bring on board, right? If we become complacent and, oh, well, we don't have to look for anybody new, and then we'll never have new voices, and there'll always be, I think, new voices that we want to make sure we bring on. What we might want to do, and I don't know if this could be included, was it doesn't mean that once you serve, you can never return, right? So if
That's already included.
It is down
It says
lower.
no more than 2 consecutive years.
Oh, yeah. Thank you.
So then someone else could.
But also, just to clarify, this is not to be a commissioner, but an officer, right? So the chair and vice chair.
My bad.
Right?
Thank you.
Yes, that's absolutely correct. Sorry.
I was up at 3 a.m.
We're appointed for longer than a year.
Fine.
But still, I think your point though, Christina, is really right. Like, give everyone an opportunity to be in a leadership role, right?
I was just going to say, all the more important that it's in a leadership role so that leadership can be rotated. Sorry. Thank you.
Thanks. Ileana.
Yeah, I just want to second Christina's point of view. I think it's super important that we don't sit in comfortably and that we are paying attention. The one thing that I would add is, as other commissions happen, and they stagger the terms so that not everybody leaves at the same time.
We don't control that. That's statutory, and our terms are already staggered.
Okay. So so the whole commission
This
goes
is just
out
about
and
officers.
okay.
I think we are staggered. I saw
are?
somewhere,
Okay.
yes.
Yes.
Oh yeah, I was just gonna make sure that that's included. Okay, perfect.
Sorry, I didn't, did we, attendance and such, is that, because I know somehow we got right to officers, so I'm just looking at the hard copy. Do we
Um,
have anything under membership about attendance?
I need to open the full document in front of me, sorry.
I didn't see anything.
I
so-
don't think we discussed anything.
No,
I
we
just had-
discussed something originally and we decided that we didn't want to limit it because some commissions do have a limit of absences, I'm sorry, that you are allowed to miss. But if I remember correctly, we did talk about not putting a limit just to be more inclusive and flexible. I don't know if that's still the case or if somebody wishes to put a limit.
I just think I guess I've run into two boards where it has been a challenge if it's not explicit in some way. But the other piece of it is now that we have these virtual options, we have a lot of flexibility. So if we meet in person, we can still put somebody up on a screen. I hate being that one person on the screen, but
Well, depending on what room we meet in.
but we could even have them on somebody's laptop. I mean, there's like, we can be creative. If it's not in here, maybe when you guys go back to the board, unless anybody else has an issue, but I think if someone doesn't have can't attend the meetings obviously there's going to be reasons. I've seen boards where folks that get a seat and then they just don't participate and there's no language to remove them.
Yeah.
For the good of the group.
We could always put in, if we wanted to put it in, X number of absences, unexcused absences. So if I've been on some boards that, your kid has, like, we have conferences later this week, I can't make it, or I got stuck in the city at work, or there's an emergency death in the family, whatever it may be, something that's announced and, let know in advance rather than just constantly being that person that never shows up.
Yeah.
It just keeps it, like we've been saying, keeps us accountable, to what we're trying to establish here.
So maybe we can, I think the next article is more about the membership, but before we move off, so I do think it sounds like we should build something in and we can talk about what we want that to look like. But I just wanted to note in this highlighted sentence about the chairperson, the limitation on 2 consecutive years, it's only for the chairperson. So do we want to include, we have 2 officers, right, the chairperson and the vice chair. Should that also be applicable to the vice chair? It's not currently included, but for the same, same theory that you just said, Christina, right? Like we only have 2 officers. So do we want to make sure that there's sort of those opportunities are available more broadly?
I think the vice chair should be included here too.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I think so
I
too.
agree.
Except that neither officer may serve for more than 2 consecutive years.
Except that neither officer. Yeah, I think that sounds fine. May serve for. Yep.
Okay.
Good. I think you just need to stick in the word may, Anna.
Oh, thank you. I'm going to edit this all properly once we're done. I'm just trying to keep. Sorry, I just want to save our progress so that things don't go terribly wrong. Okay.
Okay. So then we have vacancy, that if there's an office that becomes vacant, the full commission will elect a successor at the next scheduled meeting. That person shall remain in office for the duration of the term that was vacated. Duties, the chairperson, we did discuss this in the November meeting, will preside at the meetings when we discussed and agreed on the 2 officers and represent the commission at official functions. The vice chairperson shall, during the gosh, I'm sorry, I can like barely read. During the absence of or inability of the chairperson, have all the powers that are vested in the chairperson. I think we took that directly from a couple of other examples that we looked at. Any questions, suggestions on any of this? Please just jump in.
Sorry, I hate to make us go backwards, but Anna, could you go back up?
How far?
Right there, section 5. It's not typical that the commission gets to pick who they want as their successor.
It's the vacant officer,
Okay,
not commissioner.
okay,
So for example, like if I suddenly could no longer
Right,
serve,
okay.
right, or couldn't be a commissioner, then the rest of you would fill
right.
that vice
Okay,
chair.
sorry, I read it in a snippet rather than as part of the flow.
No, really good point. We definitely could not tell the mayor who to appoint.
Yeah, I was like, wait a minute.
Well, sort of we could, according to.
Yeah, we can suggest, but.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right, so, sorry, I scrolled down too far. All right. meeting-
Yeah, Article
voting.
3, meeting and voting, that we, Section 1, place for holding meetings will be held at a place within the city of Norwalk as designated in the notice of the meeting. Section 2, meeting dates. The annual meeting will be the third Monday of September. If that can't happen, then, whoops.
Sorry,
Then the next, if it cannot be held on this day, the next meeting shall be deemed the annual meeting. B, regular meetings, and this was as we discussed previously, regular meetings shall be held on the third Monday of each month. Chairperson shall prepare the agenda and distribute it at least 5 days prior. Special meetings, chairperson or upon the written request of 3 commissioners request. Okay, the wording is a little.
Oh, yeah, that's messed up.
Request a special meeting of the commission, or a special meeting of the commission shall be called. Yeah, maybe just a comma after commissioners, I think. I don't know. It's the chairperson or upon the written request of 3 commissioners.
How about a special meeting may be called?
Yes, that's good. By, the chairperson or upon the written request of 3 commissioners for the specific purpose of transacting business of the designated matter. Notice of a special meeting shall be given in the same manner as required for a regular meeting.
I'll capitalize that later.
Okay. Agenda additions. If any member of the public wishes to bring a matter to the commission for consideration, a written request shall be made to the commission stating the matter to be discussed, the reason, the name of the spokesperson, participants, and the amount of time requested. Upon receiving the written request, the commission will review the request. If it is found to be an appropriate matter for its consideration, shall with 10 days notice place the item on the agenda of the forthcoming meeting. So we had discussion about this and, that if somebody from the community, wants to bring something to our attention, we wanted to create this opportunity for them to do that so that the agenda is not only driven by those of us who are part of the commission. But I'll pause there to see if there's any questions or, Ileana and Sharon.
I just wanted to ask, because I know we received an email before the meeting that was requested for public reading. So where would we take the time within the schedule of the minutes of the meeting to do that? And based on what I'm reading, then that means that whatever we're getting, we're reviewing and then deciding to bring it over, or am I misunderstanding what you just said?
That's a good point. Do we want to have it reviewed by the whole commission and then voted on and then scheduled for the next meeting? Or do we want to have it reviewed by like the chair and the vice chair and then placed on the agenda if appropriate? Because that would be a shorter timeline, but less democracy.
I like the ability of having people, give open comment. I think as a citizen, I benefit greatly of having the ability to join different meetings and express a point of view. So I think that if we're advocating for, women and groups that are being underrepresented, then we would not do a favor to ourselves by not allowing something that happens in other commissions.
I totally agree. I mean, I'm sorry, Sharon. I think we should have, we absolutely should have public comment for what we're trying to tackle. But I also think that that doesn't necessarily belong here. We just, we would ask Anna, as the chair, to always put public comment, like accept minutes, public comment, like that's our basis agenda. And we work within those constructs every single month. And we just know that that's what we do. I do think it is cleaner for if stuff is going to be directed to the chair or the vice chair and they just put it on the agenda. It's always better to, it's always better to have more on the agenda and not discuss it or find that it's an easier topic to deal with than maybe what we thought the bylaws were going to be as we dive into this. Because adding something to the agenda, it gets very dicey because then the public was not notified that it was on the agenda. So it would be better for us to put public comment and anything that's been, you know, being brought to us. And if we decided as a commission not to take it up, but at least have it out for public knowledge, I think is always the best way to go at it.
Do we want to, for instance, allow men's rights activists to address us, or do we want to have some barriers?
And we can, I hate to say it this way, we deal with it as it comes. I mean, it's,
I'd like
they
to
might
say,
be coming,
yeah.
they might be coming to support us. So I don't want to say no,
Right.
you know, like, you know, exactly what we're saying. We're looking for a written request of what somebody wants to come to us with. And if it's something that has no business, you know, in front of us, then we shoot it down there.
Sharon, you had your hand up,
Yes.
and then Christina.
So I echo what Shannon just said. Yeah, I support that.
Christina?
Shannon said,
Okay.
my hand went up when I heard that, because there's a lot of things that could come up that we just don't know, and
Yeah.
we have to deal with it when it does.
Okay, so let me just see if there's other. Okay, so Anna, did you want to say something else, or?
No, I'm unclear on what final language we decided on, though. Did we want it to be the chair and vice chair or the commission?
I think if I'm not if I'm hearing you folks correctly, that basically if there's that there are two things. One is that public comment generally would be included as a standing agenda item, and then and then the second point is that that if there's a request. Yeah, so I guess there is that open issue of, like, if somebody wants to join the meeting and speak, do we just put that on the agenda, or is there a sort of vetting process for that?
Sorry, to be clear, we would have public process on the agenda every time. The only reason we didn't today is because we're still kind of dealing with internal issues, but once we have things that will be addressed, we will absolutely have public process on the agenda. As Shannon said, that would just be an agenda item. This is for if someone wants to address us,
Right.
like bring ideas to us. Like the Center for Youth Leadership has already approached me with some ideas, and I think it would be better to come from them, not me. So who had their hands up next?
Well, Sharon and Christina still have their hand. Oh no, Christina took hers down. Sharon, is yours new or still from before? Okay, no. Okay, are there other folks? Anybody want to chime in on this?
Oh, sorry, I raised my actual hand. I think leaving it as the commission will review the request, I think I kind of like that better. I feel like, you know, second meeting in, we're working really cohesively together and everything's good, but like down the road, if there's something that the chair and the vice chair don't agree with, but it's really important to the people of Norwalk, the commission should have the right to bring it forward and not worry about what the chair says. Like, I think that leaves some flexibility to allow the process to continue.
Yeah, I mean, I'll just chime in. I agree. I think that there, you know, if there's some urgency and it couldn't wait until the next meeting, then we sort of deal with it. But I think I mean, that's the downside. It's a balance between speed, right? Getting it heard by the commission in a timely way versus, as somebody said, greater democracy because there are more people making the decision. My personal preference would be increase the democracy. Let's have the commission, like you said, Shannon, make that decision. The timing thing is like if tomorrow somebody wrote to Anna and said, I'd like to come before the commission, they would have to wait until April, whatever, right?
May.
May? Isn't
If
we
we had it
March?
before the commission, we would discuss it in April and
Oh,
then they
right.
would speak in May.
Yeah,
That's a long wait.
that is a long wait.
We could also do the chair and the vice chair or 3 members of the commission.
But I read the commission will review the request. We can send an email and just all agree to put it forward.
Could we do it?
Our emails, that becomes a meeting which is subject to FOIA, which we would then have to have minutes for. So that gets messy. Sorry, I would
Yvonne.
love to do it that way. I would have
No,
suggested doing it that way if it weren't for FOIA. Yvonne, you've got your hand up.
I just have a technical question. How does somebody brings an issue to the commission? I mean, who gets the issue and how does it get distributed amongst the members of the commission?
Well, in part, that's what we're deciding right now. So right now, people are contacting me because they know I'm the chair and they know my email, unfortunately for me. I really should make a commission email. But all of us are publicly listed as members of the commission. So normally the way a commission would be contacted would be through their staff. We don't have staff yet. So right now we're dealing without staff and hoping the city hurries up and gets us some. And that ideally we would be contacted through them. But we will all be listed as members of the commission. So any of us could be contacted. So we're deciding what should be the appropriate process for that.
I mean, what about, and this is just like, this may be completely inappropriate, but given the FOIA issue you just raised, and we're trying to maximize participation in reviewing a request, what about a phone call, a ad hoc meeting to review a request? No, Anna, I see you. No.
Well, I mean, we can do it. We will have to schedule it and have minute takers present. It'll still be a meeting and we'd have to agenda it and all that. We have to observe the requirements of FOIA.
Okay.
So it would get messy fast.
How about we just add, policy placed on the agenda of a forthcoming meeting. I'm trying to talk out. Oh, Jasmine, FOIA is the Freedom of Information Act. So we have like that. We have to have minutes and everything taken for
We
public
have to give wording of 24 hours notice. and
notice of meetings and stuff. What if we just put something? I'm sorry, I'm speaking just off the top of my head, which isn't good at this hour. In the event of a timely seems too vague, but a hot topic seems like I can't get the right words, but
Urgent,
something that or in the case of an urgent matter, a majority vote of the commission will allow it to be discussed at that meeting. So rather than coming to the meeting in April and somebody presenting, we know it's coming, we vote on it right then and there. This is an urgent matter. It's going on in the schools that we need to weigh in on. A majority of the commissioners vote at that meeting and then it's discussed right then. I could see where we don't want that to be our procedure all the time because our agenda will be like too crazy and we won't be steering what we want the commission to do. But if something is that timely, we shouldn't be waiting, almost 60 days or 45 days to get something on the agenda.
Yeah.
Sharon?
Hi. Well, in addition to adding the public comments on the library board that I sit on, we also add additions to the agenda. And as Shannon said, then we vote on it. And it's only for like real urgent stuff, or we rarely ever use it, but we make it a habit to put it as part of every month's agenda.
Yvonne?
Yeah, that was kind of my next question. What do other commissions do?
Most other commissions just have public comment and no extra way for people to address them, or they have specific formats by which they're addressed, such as planning and zoning. Someone brings an appeal, fair rent, someone brings a fair rent case, etc. So it gets complicated fast, or like members of the commission raise something. This would be a way for us to let members of the public address us, but also give them time and control in a way that public comment doesn't. Like public comment is for things on the agenda. This lets them actually raise issues. So we're making our own process here. And Sharon, your hand is still up.
So sorry, I'm not used to raising hands on commissions and what boards. Hold on one second.
Sorry, to answer Sarah's question in the chat, yes, technically your email could be FOIA'd. And if something really went sideways, your cell phone too.
That's why we want to keep it off that.
So I have two thoughts. One is that we leave it as is and see how, like, what is the volume of requests, right? I mean, maybe it's not gonna, maybe it is or volume and also urgency, right? Maybe it's going to be, it will be fine. Every now and then we get a request, we put it on our next agenda for discussion and invite them to the next meeting to speak and present. The alternative idea is to create like an agenda committee or an agenda, a request review committee or something that would be comprised of some, 4 or 5 commissioners who could make that decision when the request is made. So rather than just the officers, it would be 4 or 5 people, 4 or 5 commissioners that could include the chair, right? Or vice chair or whatever, but so that we have a process that's, yes, it would still, notes have to be taken, but it's way easier to get 4 or 5 people together than 11, right? So.
And also there would be fewer FOIA restrictions if we're beneath quorum. I really like the agenda review commission idea. I don't know what y'all think. Committee.
I think we can use it to get started. We'll kind of find our formula, but yeah, as just a procedure to get everything up and running, I think it's a really good way to just, we can all work through what we want to see on there and how we want our meetings to flow and all of that. And it doesn't need to stay as a, we can leave it there for, like you're saying, agenda review committee as a safeguard, but we don't need to meet or, have a meeting every month.
Right.
Yeah, just as they come in. Okay, for now, I'm gonna make it a request should be sent through me, so y'all don't all have to have your emails out there, and then I'll send it on to whoever has to do the agenda review committee. Does that work? Mm-hmm. Okay, yuck. I need to make a new email for this.
Okay. All right, so so the next section is quorum, majority shall constitute a quorum, majority vote required. So all actions shall be by majority vote except an affirmative vote of 2/3 is required to schedule a hearing or approve amendments to the bylaws. Rules.
Oh, that says 2/3 of a quorum. Do we want it to be 2/3 of a quorum or 2/3 of the commission?
I think it, well, yeah, 2/3 of a quorum is small.
Yeah. Any objections?
No.
Because everybody keeps showing up, because if we don't have a quorum, we're not going to be able to do anything. So that's my only request.
Right.
Please.
Well, we're all here now, right? So we're still hanging in there at 8, whatever it is. Rules of procedure, Robert's Rules of Order. And it's really great that some of you know that so well, because Article 4, committees, the chairperson with the approval of the commission may create standing or special committees as deemed necessary for the function of the commission. Committees shall not have more than 5 members. Okay, so our agenda review committee will be a maximum of 5. Article 5 amendments, proposed amendments to the bylaws will be distributed to the commissioner at least 10 days prior to the meeting at which a proposed amendment is to be considered. I think that is the end. Okay.
Any additional questions or comments? Do we have a motion to approve the bylaws as amended by discussion in this meeting?
So moved.
Commissioner Testabuzzi moved. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
That was Commissioner Zuniga. Any discussion? All in favor? I think that's a majority. Everyone? All opposed? Any abstentions? Okay. We can move on to the next agenda item. And I'm going to stop sharing my screen and just read it out because the screen sharing is getting old fast. So this was discussion and motion on commission priorities. I think we've kind of covered some of that in our bylaws, but do we have any particular priorities we want to bring up aside from that we've discussed we want to be more policy oriented and what we've discussed in our bylaws? Sharon.
I'm sorry, are you asking us what we'd like for priorities?
Yep.
Okay, I'd like to start just because I've been working on this for a while. So let me just indulge for a minute. I would suggest that we build a really strong foundation and that our first priority is a public survey as a form of community outreach to organizations and to the public. And then follow that with a report so we have a baseline. Okay. A second commission priority I would like to suggest is that we diversify our city's boards and commissions. It's low-hanging fruit. I'm really confident that we can accomplish that with very few actions, actually. We wouldn't be reinventing the wheel. There's data out there on how to do it. I feel very confident about that. Those are my, well, actually, and the third one is to explore funding opportunities at the local and state level. So let us understand if we can get a line item on our city budget and what kind of grants are out there, what kind of state funding, etc. Thanks.
Okay. Sarah?
I have a question for Sharon, just on the first one that you mentioned, the survey. I'm really behind that and supportive of that. Do you mean to assess the needs or what the community feels should be a priority?
Yes, I think we all have an idea, but like understanding the internal context of Norwalk, correct?
Got it. I agree with that. I don't know if this could be part of it, but one of the priorities that I was wanting to explore is doing sort of like an assessment of employers within the city of Norwalk and the parent leave that they offer, and including for those who need family leave as a result of miscarriages.
Christina?
I echo the desire for community feedback to help us determine our priorities, because I think that's really critical that we listen to the larger voices that maybe aren't here. I would like to see us, and it sort of goes a little bit to what Sarah was just saying, but I'd like us to get some additional feedback and pay attention to workforce development needs of the women in our community, especially in light of COVID, in light of 2Gen work. And there is a current workforce development committee with the Norwalk Acts group So I think in addition to finding out from employers, and that was a very specific item, Sarah. And I think also finding out, have they lost women in their workforces, and what are they doing? Now, what are we doing? What are they doing to fill those gaps? And obviously we know that the reasons a lot of the women and parents are impacted by having to leave their job is they don't have the proper childcare, they don't have the proper support systems. So there's a lot that goes into workforce development for women, and I think ties also into what Sharon said. There's grant money out there for that. The more specific we can be about identifying how to support our constituents around workforce development and seeing these folks return to the workforce, I know very clearly there is funding for some grants to help support some of this work.
Liana?
I just want to be fully supportive of Sharon's initiatives. I also believe that by getting the feedback from the audience will help us really drive our goals and not assumptions that we may each bring based on our experiences. Secondly, definitely pursue trying to reach equity in all of our boards and commissions in the city. I know there are some really important ones that are making decisions for all of us as citizens, and where there is by no means any proper representation of the percentage of women that we have in the city of Norwalk. And Anna, you may know this better than I do for sure. I know there is some sort of initiative statewide to accomplish a proper representation of gender in boards based on whatever demographics we have on each town. So I think there's something, and I will find that and I'll bring it for one of the next meetings. But I think that our commissions need to look like our cities, not only on race, but definitely starting with gender.
Okay, so those seem like some good priorities. I'm actually, instead of having your hand still up, did you have more to say, or are you just trying to figure out how to not raise your hand? Okay, just wanted to make sure. So instead of having motions here, what I would suggest, if everyone is amenable, is we move on to the next agenda item of forming committees, because these seem like the sort of items that would be best addressed by committee, who could then explore the different ideas that have been raised. We've got diversifying the city boards and commissions. We've got submitting a survey to give us a foundational baseline, and that survey might want to include assessment of employers and other issues. So possibly forming two committees, one for each of those, and we also need to form a agenda review committee now. Does that seem like a reasonable way to proceed with those? Sharon?
Yes, can I also add a nomination committee for nominating the 11th member?
Thank you, yes. Sarah?
I don't know if this is the right moment, but I would be happy to be on a committee for the survey, since that's
Okay, so let's do this one committee at a time. Let's start with the survey committee, because that sounds the hardest. Do we have a motion to create a survey committee?
I'll motion to create the survey committee.
Okay, that was Commissioner Rendon Garcia. Second?
A second.
That was Commissioner Zuko. Discussion of who would like to be on that committee.
I was going to say, I would like to be on the committee, but I am glad to step down. Because it seems like there's a lot of folks. I don't want anyone to take offense to this, because I consider myself. We need to make sure we have non-academics doing the survey, because I've been a part of so many different aspects of this, where then we develop, and I don't want anybody who's already raised their hand to be upset with me. I once heard, because remember, if this is going out to the city, we need to keep that in mind. I hate this fact, but I was once told, and I'm having doctoral PTSD right now. But I was once told that your surveys that go to the public need to be at an 8th or 9th grade level for understanding. So I'm happy to serve on that committee, but I don't have to, but I would be interested in doing it. But whoever does come through on that committee, we need to keep that in mind.
So
Okay.
Anna, sorry, just as a sort of point of procedure, it may be helpful because to list all the committee, like just rename them, because some people may not want to volunteer for all of them, but
Yeah.
raise their hand initially and then want to change their mind when they,
Whole list of what
We're not going to limit how many you can be on, but
Right.
yes, you probably don't want to be on all of them. So right now we have a survey committee, a committee to discuss and make recommendations on the diversification of city boards and commissions, an agenda review committee, which I expect will probably be the lightest duty, and the nomination committee to search out and nominate an 11th member to the mayor. Did I miss anything?
What about the
Sharon?
workforce? Sorry, go ahead, Sharon.
I'm sorry. I don't know how you guys feel about this, but can we call the committee Research and Marketing Committee or Research and Survey so that we can put the research in there with that group?
Research and insights, maybe?
We could
I
just
don't like
make
the
it a
word
research
marketing.
committee and then make it a permanent committee. So even after the initial thing, as further research comes up, that committee could continue. Because I doubt we're going to stop needing research anytime soon on gender stuff.
And Claudia, I appreciate that you identified the workforce, but as long as it's on the survey, I think that that's an important component to it.
Okay.
Okay. So we've got a motion to create a survey committee. We're now renaming it the research committee unless there's objections. We've had one person who said she's willing to be on it. We can have up to 5 people be on it. Who else wants to be on the survey committee? So that's one. 1, 2, 3. Okay, we've had 5 people raise their hand. Oh, 6.
Wait, sorry. Who is the one person? Because you said one person. Was that me or someone else?
Christina said she was willing to serve, and then other people started raising their hands.
But I am fine stepping off if someone else wants to be involved.
Okay. Yeah, sorry. Then I have to raise my hand.
Okay, so that would give us, if Christina's off, Chantal, Sarah, Claudia, Yvonne, and Ileana. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay. We've got a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor of appointing them to these commissioners to the Permanent Research Committee? All opposed? Any abstentions? Let me take a moment to write down all your names. I know Telesco will have it, but it'll still be helpful for us to have it. Okay, moving on to the next committee, which would be, I'm going from hardest to easiest, sorry. I think the next hardest would be the Equity Committee, if we call it, to discuss equity on city boards and commissions. Does that seem like a reasonable name? Christina, your hand's raised. But you're on mute. Oh, you were saying you wanted to be on it. You didn't have comment.
Like diversification better than equity.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah. I would like to be on that one too.
Me
Okay,
too.
so let's first have a motion to create a diversification committee.
So moved.
So moved.
Second,
Second.
okay, discussion of who would like to be on it. I think we've got Jasmine, Sharon, Shannon, Christina. Anyone else? That's 4. I would also like to be on that one then. If that's all right.
And that
Okay,
actually means that among the 10 of us, all of us are on one of those 2, which I think is fabulous too.
yeah, that'll be lovely.
Yeah,
Um,
because they're
right.
substantive. That's the heart of our work, really, right? Both of those. So that's great. Or
yes.
at least to start off.
Okay, so all in favor of the diversification, sorry, any further discussion? All in favor? Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, great. That was also unanimous. We're doing great, folks. And we're at the end of the agenda. All right, so next up, we have the nomination committee to nominate an 11th member, or find and nominate to the mayor an 11th member. Do we have a motion to create that committee? Okay, Sharon and Jasmine, you got the second. Who would like to serve on that committee? Christina? Anyone else?
Well, is the work of the bylaws committee finished?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, then I'll raise my hand for the nominating committee.
Okay, Sharon, did I see your hand go up too?
I think I've picked plenty of people I'd like to pass the torch, please.
Okay, anyone else? We can have a committee of 2, that's fine. Some committees don't need a lot of people. Okay, all in favor? Opposed? Abstentions? Okay, that motion passes. And last, we have the committee I already forgot.
Agenda.
Oh, agenda review. Thank you. It's 9 o'clock on a Monday night. So who would like to be on the agenda? Sorry, do we have a motion to create an agenda review committee?
So moved.
Second? Jasmine. Okay, who would like to be on the agenda review committee? Okay, there's me and Shannon. Anyone else? Okay, we can have a 2-person committee.
Anna, I would argue that if we're going back to our original thing that the chair doesn't have that much power on the agenda, that we're equal, we want somebody else to split a tie.
That's fair.
Not that I plan on
That's fair.
arguing with you, but fair is fair. Jasmine just raised her hand, so.
Thank you. That's a good point. Okay, all in favor? Anyone else? Any discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Abstentions? Okay, so we're doing good on the agenda. I'm trying to figure out where we are on the agenda now. Okay, so discussions of April meeting. Claudia and I initially talked about maybe scheduling a longer April meeting, God help us. Some of that I think we've addressed so we could, get some actual work done. Some of that I think we've addressed by having committees appointed, but like to hear feedback, and Sharon's already got her hand up. Sharon accidentally.
So I actually was going back to, did we want to do a funding committee or no? It's like too much, like we have too much, right? Too much on the plate. Is that something we can sprinkle into the agenda, have like state reps come in and?
Yeah. I think let's get some meat of what we want to tackle, so then we can go hone into the funding of where it is.
I agree. And if anything really juicy comes our way, then there's nothing that prevents us from bringing it to our attention.
I agree.
But
We
want to make sure we have our ducks in a whatever that free. Oh, and it's late. I wouldn't even try.
And also, if something important comes up that we need a special meeting for, we have the capacity to call a special meeting to do it.
As far as the schedule, Anna, I'm not sure how many people this affects, but I'm pretty sure our next scheduled meeting is school break. So I just don't know how many people, like, I think we'll be around. I can plan around it. I just wouldn't want us to like, be like, yeah, we're gonna do that. And then everybody's like, oh crap, we're, you know, have.
Yeah, I was
different-
gonna bring that up too, because of quorum, because I won't be able to make it. I'll be traveling.
Okay, so maybe we don't want to plan a hugely long meeting in April, and maybe we'll discuss it again in April when we hear the reports of the committees and make a plan for May.
Yeah.
That sound
Hannah,
good?
can I ask a question though? This is related. Can you clarify next steps, expectations for these committees? Like, are they supposed to meet before the next meeting? Bring
Sorry.
something?
Ideally, the committees would arrange the meetings themselves for times that work for them. And then within the committee, y'all can decide what you want to do and how much time you need to do it. And then report back to the, you would ideally also appoint a chair who would report back to the commission each month on your progress, or if you've reached a point where you want to make recommendations that we accept a whole survey. Although God, we need staff if we're doing a survey, because we can't mail those all out.
I was just
Then-
gonna ask that in terms of timing, yeah, to know what technology and support, do we have any idea? Do we need to write the mayor and put some pressure? Like, what's the best way to go about it? Because we were highly promised staff when this was formed, so.
I have been told that the city is working to obtain staff. It has been, however, since November.
Yeah.
If we want, we could write a letter. We could you could ask me to relay to the mayor that we would really like some staff now, please. Or
Yeah.
to Lamont Daniels.
The other commissions have staff.
Yeah,
They do
Oh,
have
yeah.
staff.
they do.
Yeah, they do all of what Anna's been able to pull together tonight. I mean, they would run the meeting, they would set up the Zoom, they would let us into the Zoom, you know, little
Yep.
details like that.
Yeah,
Yes, and
Um,
also I retired from the city. I would
Yeah.
like to stop working for them.
yeah.
Well, I just signed on to be, you know, on the agenda committee, so I'll send an email, so it's not constantly coming from you, Anna.
Yeah,
Just to say, like, we had a great meeting last night, we're really excited, but we need, you know, the support that's been promised, so what's the deal?
yeah. And Shannon,
And-
I think if we can include the language that this commission is formed, you know, to improve the status of women, and the actual commission of women does not have staff.
Staff, yeah,
I think
really
that
not
needs
great
to be-
optics to start
It
with.
really needs to be stressed because
Yep.
it's not good optics for the city.
I'm on it.
Thank you.
Okay, Yvonne, I can't tell who was up first, Yvonne or Eliana. So,
Oh, I'm done. Never mind.
okay, Yvonne,
So just to, for my own clarification, when we meet within the committees, we also need to make the notes from the committees public and have the same process we do as a,
you don't have to have an agenda, although it would probably be smart for you to have an internal agenda. You probably should appoint a chair who will report back to the commission in the meetings. But we don't have quite the same FOIA requirements for the committees as long as they are below quorum.
Got it.
So your life is easier. Okay. Any other discussion?
Just quickly going back to the April date, it is break. I mean, I'm here, but if we have a number of people who are not, we should just maybe get a read of that, you know? If we're going to meet and we end up not having
Yeah.
a quorum, for example, that would be a waste of everyone's time. So
Especially since we don't have staff to determine if there's quorum well in advance. Let's do a straw poll right now. Who knows they're not available?
and that's April 18th is the third April in third Monday in April.
This is people who are not available.
Yes.
I'm not- Just me.
50-50 chance. I'm still finalizing.
Yeah, I'm kind, if we're doing 50-50s, I'm kind of there too. We haven't gotten there, but I'd hate to not do something and then we end up canceling, you know?
Okay. 1, 2, 3, 4.
And actually, come to think, of it, I might be taking my son to a college visit, but yeah. I just
Okay, so
realized.
we're at kind of 50-50. Let's see where quorum is, and I'll try and check in with everyone a week beforehand where we'll have a better idea, do you think?
Question, does anybody have a problem moving it to the next following week?
Mm-mm.
Because we,
Following week?
No, I
Mhm.
didn't know that was an option.
Yeah.
We've got to check if the city has Zoom available.
Oh, that's right, because I
Another thing
forgot
we
that.
need to
Sorry, I forgot that.
So I can certainly follow up with the city to see if they would be, if they can have Zoom available to move to the next week. And if not, check in with everyone the week before.
Yeah.
Is that available to everyone?
So that's Monday,
great,
April
thank you.
25th.
I think that would be the next week if I'm doing math right.
So we'll hold
Yeah.
that 8-2. Okay.
Okay, I'll follow up.
Thank you very much.
All right. Any further discussion on the April meeting? Okay, and now the most important part of any agenda.
Motion to adjourn.
Anna got it. We've got a second for Liliana. Sorry, Jasmine, she beat you. Thank you all. This has been a long night and you've all been wonderful. Yes,
Thank
sleep.
you. Thanks, Anna. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, everyone. Lovely to
Everyone,
see
take
you.
care.
Finally.
Nice to
Right,
see
and
you.
you get to less y'all, so we appreciate your time.
Thank
Thank
you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.